New Health Minister Joe Phaahla has hit the ground running. This morning he addressed the weekly COVID-19 government response briefings where he was talking about issues of vaccination as well as the warning about the surge in the country's coastal provinces. Let's talk about his appointment with the DA Siviwe Gwarube, who also is a member of the Portfolio Committee on Health in Parliament. Siviwe, always good to have you on. So you are quite in favor of Joe Phahla's appointment. I believe you've described him as a steady pair of hands.
Yes, good evening, Tembegile. Look, I mean, if you look at the options that the president had, from the cabinet, if you were looking at what he was going to possibly reshuffle with, I think that Dr. Phaahla has been a deputy minister under two various ministers. And at this very critical moment, Tembegile, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We've had an acting minister for 2 months. There are a number of senior management team members in the department that need to be removed and disciplined urgently. I think it's very important that we have somebody who's there, who has been there in the past, and Dr. Phaahla can really keep the trains moving. And so on that score, we welcome the appointment. The most bizarre, though, has to be the appointment of the former chairperson of health, Dr. Newzroom, who in his time has been an MEC, a health MEC in KZN and presided over the country's possibly worst oncology crisis. So that it really makes no sense how then that person can be elevated to being a deputy minister.
I suppose one could take that question back and say, how in the first place was Mr. Romo or Dr. Romo even fit to then be chairperson of the committee that deals with health when during his time as MEC, he was, as you say, the MEC who oversaw the worst oncology crisis in KwaZulu-Natal?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, I think that the elevation, his elevation to Parliament even then sparked a lot of uproar, particularly then the appointment and his election to being the chairperson of health. And it's been something that has been dogging him for a long time. And Temekile, I would just like to remind your viewers that hundreds of people in KZN literally could not get any oncology services in the province under the leadership of Dr. Newzroom. And in fact, rumors has it that the ANC could not sustain having him in the provincial cabinet anymore, and that is why he was relegated to Parliament. And so it is rather a bizarre appointment by the minister. I think he has an array of 8 other MECs he could have looked at who are currently serving in various provincial departments. And so that appointment really makes no sense. But I am hoping, though, that Dr. Phaahla can find his voice and that he can be a lot more assertive so that he can start the process of cleaning out the rot in the department. Because if you read that SIU affidavit, you'll realize that the rot is not just limited to political leadership, but some also members of the leadership team in the administration.
Just on the point you were making about Dr. Joe Phaahla, the new health minister, having to find his voice, what else is he going to need to be able to lead the health department, not only in issues to do with the COVID-19 pandemic? We still have the ever-unfolding process around the national health insurance. We've got hospitals that generally are understaffed, under-resourced on top of a pandemic, so a lot to do.
Absolutely. I mean, his work is cut out for him, and that's why it concerns me that his second in command is somebody who doesn't have a very good track record of running a solid health system at all. And so, because he obviously needs a 2IC that is going to be really jacked up, because, as you say, there's the NHI bill, which is coming down the tracks. And perhaps the process in Parliament will mean that bill probably is dead in the water, considering our fiscal constraints. But there's a number of things in the department which are quite urgent. And when I say finding his voice, I mean, I think Dr. Phaahla has very much been somebody who's played very much in the background. He has been somebody who's been allocated sort of the Cuban medical students program. And he's not somebody who's taken more of a lead. And I think perhaps it was either a product of letting the actual minister take the lead. And so I'm really hoping that he can find his voice and be assertive, so we can see him leading the department, not just through this pandemic, but also filling critical vacancies in various places, holding provinces accountable for, mismanagement of public funds, ensuring that the PPE scandals are dealt with in various provinces. And so, and I'm hoping that he can rise to the occasion.
I want to ask you about former Health Minister Zweli Mkhize. You were among the first to call for his suspension or resignation. It finally came at the 11th hour yesterday as President Ramaphosa was going to speak on the cabinet reshuffle. Mkhize says he's going to challenge aspects of that SIU report because he's got questions about it, right? But he also then says he's resigning in the interest, or having noticed that there is a need for stability at health given this moment of a pandemic. What is your take on the minister's resignation letter and the reasons he's put forward?
Look, I mean, we will welcome the resignation of the minister, although, it would be generous to honestly call it a resignation. The reality is that this has been an embattled minister who has been facing grave allegations for months now. The fact that the president took so long to act against him is, in fact, in itself an indictment. And so I think this is very much someone who jumped just literally hours before, or an hour before they had to be pushed. But I think what is going to be very critical here, I mean, the minister is well within his rights to take the SIU report on review, and he should do that. But I think it's going to be very important that the NPA and the SAPS do not stop their investigations into this matter. There's a whole a network here of misconduct and possible corruption, which needs to be investigated. Because you see, Thembekile, it's also important that politicians don't just resign so that they can escape accountability. If, in fact, it has been proven that you have stolen public money, then you must go to jail. And it's as simple as that. And once we start instilling that culture, I think that's when we can start winning the war against corruption.
The Health Portfolio Committee, which you sit on, will now need to find a new chairperson because Dr. Dhlomo is now going to be, or is in fact, Deputy Minister for Health. When you look around you, that position will likely go to the ANC based on their numbers. Who do you think should take over as chair for it to function optimally, because it plays a crucial oversight role, especially at this moment?
Absolutely, and it really does. And as we have seen several weeks ago, when we tried to, a couple of months ago, when we tried to get Dr. Mkhize to come and account for the Digital Lives Matter, and we had the ANC blocking that and shielding essentially the minister from accountability. And so really, honestly, I shudder to think that any of the people within my committee who belong to the ANC can take up the ranks of being the chairperson, because it seems to me that there's very much a collective misunderstanding of the role of Parliament in the entire cohort. And I'm hoping that perhaps we can see somebody else seconded to the committee, somebody else who can, who can do a better job. But we'll certainly, as opposition parties, be putting forward a name from the opposition parties, because again, we're of the belief that good governance models also really do require opposition members as people who chair portfolio committees, because it really does enhance accountability. And so we will make sure that we put a name forward, and we'll see if the ANC can see things our way.
Siviwe Gwarube, member of the Democratic Alliance, also a member of Parliament. Thank you for your time as always.